I welcome you to Agile Digital Business. This is an episode from the archives when the show was formerly called Online Course Connections. You are about to hear me introduce in more detail my guest, Amy Skyles from Missouri S&T. Thanks for being here. Let's go.
You're listening to Agile Digital Business with host Vicki Maris. She's an author, speaker, and marketer, helping you with your business transition to digital in content marketing and customer engagement. Online Course Connections is a podcast hosted by online course designer Vicki Maris. She's passionate about improving online experiences and helping people connect in the online environment. Vicki's about to bring you an interview with a pro in the world of online courses. Stay tuned for what's up next.
In episode 5 of Online Course Connections, we're going to talk about ways that you can transform your traditional classroom teaching activities into a blended or online space for your students or customers. I am excited to bring to you this interview with a veteran in the business, Amy Skyles from Missouri S&T.
Online Course Connections is a podcast hosted by online course designer Vicki Maris. She's passionate about improving online experiences and helping people connect in the online environment. Vicki's about to bring you an interview with a pro in the world of online courses. Stay tuned for what's up next.
Well, hello, everybody. I am in the studio with Amy Skyles today, and I am just thrilled she is here on the podcast and willing to share her expertise with us. Amy and I met at the OLC Accelerate Conference in 2016, which was down in Orlando, Florida. I had signed up to take a pre-conference workshop, and Amy was one of the co-presenters. And Amy, I want to thank you for being on the show.
It's good to be here.
I think it'd be best if we just start out with you providing my listeners with some of your background and what brought you to the world of instructional design and e-learning.
Sure. I am currently an instructional designer at Missouri S&T in Rolla, Missouri. We're a pretty small little town right in the middle of Missouri, so we're right in the middle of the country, 100 miles from the nearest shopping mall. Small hometown community. I've been here my whole life. And I'm actually an alum of this university. My bachelor's degree is in biology. And I did a stint in K-12. I taught junior high science for about 8 years just because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then I came to work at the university 5 years ago. I started as an instructional technologist. And along the way, I got a graduate certificate as an online educator. I also have a master's degree in middle school education as well. And then it just kind of fell into my lap to start working on this project where we investigated how you could transform laboratory classes to make them blended or flipped or online and really, change the way that lab classes are being taught.
I work right now in the College of Engineering at Purdue University, and some of our faculty are starting to flip classrooms, so I know there are going to be some people that will love to hear what you have to say. Where did you start with this project?
It actually began, I think they started thinking about a possibility before I started working here, or right around the time I started working here. And there was some funding that came from our university system. We're part of a 4-campus system, and the funding allowed us the opportunity to just investigate and see if it could be done. And what I found when I first started looking was that there were some schools that had little one-off labs. There might be one instructor or one department that had really looked into creating an online lab course. And none of those schools that I looked at, including a lot of our peer institutions, had any sort of centralized, focused effort by the campus to develop some online labs. So really that's what it started as, was just this idea to see if it could work, and investigating to see that really it didn't exist. So we figured that it would give us a great opportunity to be pioneers in that area.
Mm-hmm. So once you decided you wanted to go forward, did you also then pilot a project?
Oh yes, we have had, I couldn't even tell you the exact number of courses that we've had now, probably between 7 and 10 labs that have been redesigned as blended or online. We had one that was fully online. It was a general biology lab for non-majors, and I was able to get my foot in the door with that department just because I had some relationships and I had built rapport with instructors as an undergraduate student. But we've also got a circuits lab, introductory circuits lab, that's going to be offered fully online very soon. Other than that, the model that seems to work the best is a blended lab. And what we have for our chemistry lab, general chemistry, the students come to the lab 1 week, and then while they're there, they pick up a kit that they will do in the common areas of campus the next week. So it's not simulated content, and that was especially important for our general chemistry course because they like to follow the American Chemical Society guidelines. And those guidelines state that simulations are not sufficient to replace hands-on learning activities. So we have developed kits that the students can take when it's safe and when it's appropriate for doing experimentation outside of the lab.
So in this case, it sounds like your students are on campus. Do you have any that are completely distant students that come in during that first week?
We have mostly on-campus students. We have, I think it's a little over 8,000 now students, undergraduate in residence on campus. But for the most part, these are labs that are accommodating our students who are on campus. The one exception is the circuits lab that is being delivered to some students at some community colleges in the St. Louis area, which is about 100 miles from us. There are students who will potentially transfer here, and they've always been able to take the lecture course, and then as long as they can pass our final exam, they can transfer their lecture credit. But they've always been behind a semester with their lab. So this will allow them, when they come in as transfer students, to have one full semester of introductory circuits lecture and lab for credit here on campus.
Okay. If for an instructor that is interested in doing this with you, how much lead time do you like to have to work with, either the instructor or whoever you look at as the content expert for, helping them design these elements of the online lab?
That's a good question. We have a program funded by our Provost's office called the Provost eFellows program, and our eFellows applicants, if they're awarded the grant, they can get up to $5,000 to use toward their redesign. And the majority of our participants in these laboratory redesigns, just like the majority of our participants with our lecture redesigns, they are eFellows awardees. And the funding is limited, but what it allows is 18 months of time working one-on-one, or sometimes 2 or 3 of us on one instructor with an instructional designer, to redesign the course from the ground up. And this is something that follows the building blocks workshop that you attended at OLC. That was a way for us to really get them to get invested and to have a process for evaluating their redesign. And we do the same thing with our laboratory courses. We follow the exact same redesign procedures, and they get about 18 months. Some have done it in a shorter time. We actually had the general chemistry lab, did it over the summer a couple of years ago, and piloted that fall with a small group. That is one of our biggest labs on campus. There are 1,200 students in the fall semester.
That was going to be one of my other questions.
Yeah, we were out of space with that lab, and there was no way to get the students into the lab class at the same time that they were taking the lecture. So similar to what we saw with electrical engineering, they were out of sequence. And then when they get out of sequence like that, that delays their time to graduation. And that's something that we definitely want to try to avoid. So allowing them to take the lab at a time when it can reinforce the concepts that are taught in the lecture is really important.
Oh, that's really neat. I am also hearing, just from my own work with instructors and programs, I'm guessing you usually have a champion, a faculty champion, somebody who is really fired up about the concept. Has that been the case, or have you really had to bring people along with the idea of what you're doing?
We have several faculty champions, and I think the biggest part of that is the fact that they have come to respect our educational technology department just for all of the things that we do. We work closely with another department, the Center for Educational Research and Teaching Innovation. We call them CERTI. And we do a lot of workshops and various activities on campus, bring guest speakers in, and we're able to help them grow professionally when it comes to their teaching, because we are a research university and they are more focused on research. They see us as experts that can help them grow with teaching as well. And so I think that is the biggest part, is that they do respect that we can help them with teaching. So even though we're not content experts when it comes to their lab equipment, and they are, the best in the business, they are some of the leaders in their field, we can still help them with the teaching part of their courses, and they've really come to respect that.
I am really fired up about what Amy is sharing with us here in this interview. I want you to stay tuned. She is going to talk to us at the end of the interview about the Laboratory Redesign Handbook. And please do come back for the next episode of Online Course Connections. I have an interview with Jeff Jennings, who works alongside Amy at Missouri S&T. The two of them were co-presenting in the conference that I attended in the fall of 2016, OLC Accelerate. All right, let's get back to the rest of the interview with Amy Skyles. Of all the lessons you've learned in this process, or lessons you think that your content experts have learned, what's one or two that surface that you'd want to share with my listeners?
Oh, this is my favorite part. So I actually recently wrote a handbook. It's just called the Laboratory Redesign Handbook, that collects together all of the things, well, not all of the things, but the most important things that I found throughout this process. This has been going on for 3 to 4 years on our campus. I guess, gosh, it's been like 4 years now. We started in 2012. So the handbook that I wrote, it's a 2-part book. The first part is just tips and tricks, and they're kind of the everything everyone wants to know. And I've presented on this at several different places. The second part, though, this is the part that incorporates in some of those building blocks of redesign, like we did at the workshop at OLC where we met. And in that part, it's really just how do you get it done. But the tips are the things that are different in lab courses that don't apply to lecture courses that we've redesigned. So that's the part that it's kind of my specialty area. The biggest tip that I have is, if you are approaching an instructor who really needs a redesign, you see some pedagogical reason why this person might need to redesign their class, don't offer to help them put a lab online. When you call it an online lab, instructors at STEM institutions don't want to listen to that, because they teach hands-on, and when they think of online, they think of simulations. So my number one tip is, don't call it an online lab, even if that's what it's going to be.
Okay.
We call our labs Delta Labs. In STEM, Delta means change, right? I remember taking my notes as an undergrad, and I'd always, change in temperature, change in volume. I'd always use the little Delta symbol on my notes, my shorthand. So the word Delta does resonate with them, and they understand the meaning that Delta means change, and we are changing their labs. But in our case, Delta is short for Delivering Experiential Labs to All.
Nice.
And so, right, it's really a perfect word for it, but it's got some deeper meaning too. So we aim to deliver experiential labs to all, so that we can reach those learners no matter where they are or what their needs. So that's one of the tips. That's my favorite one, is just don't call it an online lab. If you want to try online labs, call it something else. Another one that we've had to be really careful about is disability support.
Okay.
And with a typical lab class, students are usually given a partner. And if they have a partner and the student has some sort of disability, maybe it's a fine motor skill impairment, their partner can take over those parts that might need manipulation of equipment. But if they're at a distance and they're on their own, who can help them? And is it acceptable? And is the university liable if there's some sort of accident? So we can't answer all of those questions, obviously, but we can help instructors come up with a plan. What would we do if a situation like this arises, and what problems might we think about in advance? So that's been another really big one that we've had to be very, very careful about. And then the third one that I'd like to share with you has to do with environmental safety.
Okay.
Because we are, as we mentioned earlier, primarily students are living on campus, we have to worry about disposal of materials. And a lot of the vendors that create kits for at-home experimentation create the kit where it's sent to one student in one home, and it's in micro scale so they can dump things down the drain. Well, if we are sending it to 1,200 students living in the same dorm facility, micro scale is no longer micro scale if they're all doing the same experiment at the same time. So considerations like that, if you are using equipment in a way from a vendor that is different from what the vendor's initial intentions were. That was another big one that we were worried we would have some roadblocks with that with our large student population using the kits. But there's a lot more information that I would love to share. My handbook is available on the S&T website. I could get the link to that for you as well. It's available in just a PDF, or we can actually ship the bound handbook as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And I will gladly put the link in the show notes for our listeners to find. And do you mind if people would reach out to you with questions, or is there a place on the website where like a contact us tab or something?
Yeah, absolutely. They can reach out to me directly, or they can go to our EdTech website and find some more information. It's a part of our Teach page. We separate out our how-to from our why-to in a lot of areas. We have technologists and developers who do a lot of the how-to and troubleshooting and just how to use this. And then our designers do a lot of but why would you use this tool? So our design page is edtech.mst.edu/teach. And it's about best teaching practices and why you would use certain types of technologies.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. I was realizing at the very beginning that we didn't say what the S&T is of your university.
Yes.
Well, you don't have to apologize. I'm just thinking that in case we have listeners outside of the Midwest, or I will have listeners around the globe too, or do have. So would you mind giving us just a little bit of background about the university and the name?
Yes. So we are Missouri University of Science and Technology. We were founded in 1870. As the Missouri School of Mines. We've had a couple of different names since then. I actually graduated from UMR, University of Missouri-Rolla, but it is no longer UMR. We are now Missouri S&T, or Missouri University of Science and Technology. And as I mentioned earlier, we're right in the middle of Missouri, not a very big town, but we are well known for our St. Pat's celebration.
Oh, really?
Over 100 years ago, the students demanded that St. Pat is the patron saint of engineers, and they needed time off, and it was granted. And so now it happens every year. We get spring recess in addition to spring break, and we actually have our big Teaching with Technology conference. It's called Teaching and Learning with Technology, or TLT, at that time every year, hosted by our Educational Technology Department. And the reason we do it then is because we can get classroom spaces for conference sessions because there's no class. But it's a big, fun fest of Kelly Green, and the students are enjoying the festivities. So we invite people to come join us at that time as well.
That's a fun bit of trivia about your university.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. The students carry around these giant shillelaghs, which are really big stumps that they've cut down, and they beat serpents, little snakes, they're rubber snakes, in pits on campus. It's fun. People who aren't aware of what is going on and they show up might be a little concerned, but it's just a lot of fun. It's a huge tradition, and the community gets involved, and it's something that people come back for every year, and all the alumni like to come back for St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, that's neat. I have Connemara ponies on my farm in Battleground, Indiana, so I'm very familiar with some of those Irish traditions. The Connemara is the native pony of Ireland.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, we share a lot of stories.
Yeah, our conference is actually we're calling for proposals right now, but that closes sometime very soon. But we have people come from all over the country to participate in our conference, and there's information about that at tlt.mst.edu as well. And it's a free conference. It's 2 days. This year it actually falls on St. Patrick's Day, one of the days. I can't remember if it's the Thursday or Friday, but it's always the Thursday and Friday of the week of St. Patrick's Day.
Okay. And you had mentioned that you also have spoken at conferences and things about what we were talking about here in the podcast.
Yes.
Would you like to be doing more of that? Can I give you a shout out to my listeners that they could bring you into their conference? Absolutely.
I have presented at, I can't even tell you how many places at this point, but yes, I'm happy to, just collaborate and talk and have discussions or come present and share some of the tools and ideas that we've come up with. I've come up with some really interesting ways of finding tools that weren't necessarily meant for educational purposes, but that can be used in a classroom setting or in a lab kit of some sort. So I'm more than happy to talk with anybody or present or come, do campus visits with other schools.
Okay, that's wonderful. All right, Amy, with that, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you very much for being a guest on the podcast, and what a neat project that you have going on. I love to scale things, so I just love the concept of how a podcast interview can help so many other people learn about tips and techniques and concepts that they can use. So you've certainly shared one of those today.
Well, thanks so much for having me. This has been really great, and I'm happy to get the word out, continually about this project. So it's been fun.
Well, I appreciate it, and thank you again, and I will send you all the information so that you can share out the show and the links to the show notes and that kind of thing with your friends and colleagues too, okay?
All right. Thanks so much.
I hope you enjoyed that interview with Amy Skyles. Come back for the next episode when I talk with Amy's colleague, Jeff Jennings, and he and I discuss the use of a course blueprint that will help you in the design of your courses. And it doesn't matter if you're designing a course for the traditional classroom, for a workshop at a conference, or for an online learning experience. This blueprint will help you out. I'll see you again soon.
Thank you for listening to Online Course Connections with Vicki Maris, e-learning strategist and course designer. You can connect with Vicki at her website, vickimaris.com, and in Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope at her handle at Vicki Maris. That's VICKIEMARIS. On Facebook, you can find her at her page at fb.com/VJMaris. And a big thank you for helping tell others about the show. You can share the link to this episode through your podcast player, or you can leave a rating and review in iTunes. Until the next episode, go make a difference in the lifelong learning journeys of your followers.